Well, g'day. It's a crazy old world, isn't it? And for the past few days, you've heard me talking about some of the new ways we'll be trying to manage an online service. And many churches, of course, are trying to do that. But I also now want to talk about a bigger picture. Because what's happening to the church right now is much more than how we have to do an online service. It is now time for us to think quite differently about church and this moment we're in. The world has been through moments like this before, and one of the sad things we have to face is that the church hasn't always done brilliantly. I was listening recently to author and commentator David Brooks point out that a lot of us are only vaguely aware of the thing called the Spanish flu. Now, did you know the Spanish flu killed more people than World War One? But one of the challenges was uh, that the Spanish flu caused such dislocation, such antagonism, such separation of community that at the end of it, people were so embarrassed by how they acted that they didn't talk about it again. Our great grandparents didn't manage a pandemic well. And there is a real danger. We see it in our community right now that we could end up just like our great grandparents. We could end up being self-focused. We could end up fighting over toilet paper, and people could be literally dying in their homes and nobody care. Right now is an existential crisis, not only for the world, but for the Christian church. How are we going to respond to this moment? And if you have been used to a model of church where your pastor does it all for you, I am sorry, it is not going to work like that anymore. We need to think in a new way. And I want to talk a little bit about what kind of church we need to be. And I want to address this directly to my church family here at Citywide as an invitation. But I also want to suggest that this is also true for every other Christian church on the face of the planet right now. So come with me. I've been doing a little bit of thinking about this. We've been talking about it. And I think we have to realize this is a moment where everything has changed. We used to come to church through those front doors, and we used to think that church was what happened on a Sunday morning. It is now very clear that the crisis facing this world is going to cause us and ask us to think in completely different ways. I first want to talk about what this means for you personally, and then I want to talk about what this means for the church. So, first of all, let's talk about what it means for you personally. Ultimately, and this is a diagram I prepared earlier just to make sure I covered off on everything I want to say this morning. Ultimately, the fundamental question in all of this for people who say they follow Jesus is going to be, do you actually trust that God is in control at the moment? If you don't trust that God is in control at the moment, you are going to need to grab the steering wheel. We need to remind each other like never before that we need to trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding. In all our ways, acknowledge Him and He will make our paths straight. In this moment, we need to trust God, but we also, like Martin Luther, when the plague came through, he said, look, I'm going to trust God completely, but I'm also going to do everything that the healthcare professionals advise me to. I'm going to be smart about how I distance myself and how I respond to the health crisis. Trusting God doesn't mean being stupid. It is a time where we need to be washing our hands. And even as we wash our hands, they've been saying to do it for 20 seconds. One of the ways to measure that, let's use the Lord's Prayer as we wash our hands and begin this idea. Like never before, you are going to need to take responsibility for your own spiritual journey. You cannot expect your pastor or your small group leader to do it for you. And what do I mean by that? I think there are three things you need to be thinking about. For us as a church, there are three words that have been really important: follow, bless, and share. First of all, what does it mean for you to actually follow God in this moment? Well, I suggest there are three things you need to be doing. You need to be spending time in prayer. And if you're anything like me, when things are scary, it's like the adrenaline system kicks in and it's hard to slow down. You're going to need to find ways of letting yourself slow down and just spend time in prayer. You're going to need time in the Bible. Now, if you one of the ways we're doing this as a church family is we're sharing a daily devotional thing on the YouVersion app. You might have other ways, but let me tell you, you are going to need to spend, my suggestion is at least half an hour in the Bible each day, just reforming the reality of God's story in your heart and in your mind, and being open to all that God has for you. And between as we pray and as you read the Bible, ultimately for everything we do right now, you need not to be looking to listen to leaders or politicians and looking for hope from them. You personally need to take responsibility to listen to God at this moment. We've spent a lot of time talking about listening prayer as a church family, and we've actually got online on our website the listening prayer hearing God course with my friends Jeremy and Lisa from Canada. This may be a time to do a refresher, but can I encourage you, spend time listening to the voice of God, and for each one of us there are going to be unique challenges in this moment. Now, in addition to that, there is a real danger that you can become isolated in this moment. Keep talking about social isolation, social distancing. The last thing you need is social distance in this moment. You do need physical social distance, but you don't need relational distance. You need friends more than ever before. And it's going to take work like it hasn't before. So, can I encourage you to work at thinking about what does it mean to share life? As a church, we've been talking about kingdom cells for a while. I think, like never before, you need at least a couple of other people who understand what life is like for you. And that's what we mean by kingdom cell. Catching up with people every week, even if it needs to be on Zoom, people who you trust and who you can develop a relationship with, and you can do this journey together with. Can I encourage you, if you haven't yet found a couple of people who you are doing life in a more intense way, a more honest way, I would love to do everything I can to encourage you to do that. And if you need help finding people, please contact Dan Hutchison here at the office, or me, or anyone else from the church, and we will work with you to find a couple of people to do life with. Because it is essential that you are in a kingdom cell at the moment that is wrestling with how do you be faithful to the calling that God has on your life at the moment. And that's what you need to hear. God is calling you at the moment. This is, if it ever was, Christianity is no longer a spectator sport. It is something you are now in the playing field of a global crisis. And there is a specific role for you to play. And you're going to need people alongside you as you work out what that means. As part of that, we are establishing a micro church model. You've seen me in other videos talking about how that's all going to work logistically, but like never before, you're going to need to be coming back regularly and being reminded that Jesus is the center of the universe and you're not. This is going to be so important for your journey over these next weeks. So please connect with a micro church. Don't use this as a chance to think, oh, I'm just going to watch church. Church is not something you watch. Church is something we are. And so I want to encourage you, make sure you are connecting, even if it's online, in a church family that allows you to see and be seen and worship together. And the other thing, so I think you need, like never before, you need to take responsibility to follow Jesus, to share life, and you need right now, we need you not to be thinking about what you do, but to be thinking about how you bless your neighbours, your literal neighbours. Our family has just given invitations to all our neighbours on our street to join the local Facebook group. And it's been lovely seeing the response from people. They're just excited. We've created a closed Facebook group for our street as a way that we can stay in touch because people are lonely and looking for help. So in this moment, as we lead up to International Neighbour Day, we need to think about how do we care for and be with our neighbours. You also need to understand that there are a group of people that you are particularly called to care for and be responsible for now. In a particular way, we want to be with and stand with our healthcare workers who are at the front edge of all this. And as churches, we need to be particularly aware and supporting them in what God has called them. But we also need to be supporting uh, our mums and dads who are called to be caring for their kids in this moment. We need to be caring for our small business owners who are called to manage a small business in a time where there is no business. We need to be, as a church, with you, but you need to be clear on what your call is in the moment. And there are many different ways that you'll need to think through and adapt to this moment. And finally, you are called to be part of a church, and like never before, your church needs you. We need a bigger range of gifts and skills than the church ever has before, because the challenge facing the church now is bigger than it ever has been. And that's what I want to talk about right now. What does it mean to become the kind of church that is ready to respond to this moment? And how do you find your place in that? Over here, I've mapped out what church now looks like. We're talking about micro church. What we mean by that is a network of small churches, but ultimately it is God's church, and it's a big church, but it's only going to be the church, as Paul says in Ephesians, as each of us finds our place in the service that God has for us. Now, there are a number of things we need to be thinking about. One of the things that has shaped my thinking about the Christian church is Paul's address to the Ephesians, and in chapter 4, where he talks about the gift of the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And then he goes on and says that the body held together by every supporting ligament. And what he's saying in that is that the job of the church is to be the supporting ligaments. And what do the supporting ligaments do? Well, he points out that they attach people to Jesus, who is the head, and of course, ligaments attach people, the bits of the body, to each other. That's part of what they do, and they are what enable the body to take action. And as I said already, like never before, the church needs to be ready to take action. We at Citywide need to be ready to take action. There is going to be an incredible impetus, an incredible part of you that just wants to stay home and care for yourself. Can I encourage you? Don't be selfish at the moment. We need you. And we need a bigger and broader range of gift and skill than we have ever needed as a church family. And if you're from a different church, can I encourage you right now? Your pastor needs you to come round him and to bring the gifts and skills you have, because your church needs you right now. What are the gifts and skills we need? First of all, we need people who are going to connect in ways that we've never been able to do before. We need people to help us think in new ways. Like never before, we need our IT people. We need people who help us connect and help our older folk and people who are less technologically savvy to work out how to connect on a video conference. We need people who can think of creative ways to use IT to enable us to stay connected. We're going to probably need people to program new ways of giving feedback and prayer and rostering, all kinds of things. We're going to need IT people like we've never needed them in the church before. We're going to need people with the courage and the gifting to visit, to be visiting people just one-on-one. We need not to lose our social connection at the moment. It's just so important. And we need people who are, as increasingly we get to a point where it's not possible to visit everybody every day. But for us as a church, we want to get to a point where everybody who are in the particular at-risk groups are getting a phone call each day, and where each of our families is at least getting a phone call or a Skype call at least once a week, so we know pastorally how everybody's going. Let me tell you, it is not possible for your pastor to do this. It's not possible at Citywide Baptist Church. It's not possible in any church with more than half a dozen people in it. Your pastor needs help to keep connecting and making sure that people are traveling well. So we need to be connecting as a church, and we need to be connecting in brand new ways. We need to be caring for one another and for people in the community in ways we never have. We need, if there are retired health professionals amongst us, your pastor now needs somebody alongside them who is a retired health professional who can be thinking through and working out how do we care for each other in our health? How do we make sure that that people are uh, cared for, the risk that we are evaluating risk, that's proper sanitation, the things are being wiped down and things properly. But we need, and like never before, we need people who can under those people in the healthcare industry. You are also the best people to stand alongside and be alongside the people who are currently serving on the front lines in the healthcare industry to be our supports and to support the whole world at the moment. So there is a particular role right now. If you have been part of the healthcare industry and you are currently retired, can I suggest it is time to be reassigned? We need you. We need you to be supporting people in their healthcare and to be supporting our healthcare professionals. If you have financial expertise, this is a time where uh, a whole lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And your church and us as a church, we've got to work out how to respond. It is not okay for people in your church fellowship to go without food. It's not okay for people in your church fellowship to lose their home in this time. And these things are real risks. So we need people with clear financial understanding to work out how to both navigate the assets and resources of the church, but also to work with and mentor people in managing this time financially. There is going to be more stress on people's financial budgets in this moment than we have experienced in our lifetime. So we need people who aren't just, forgive me, we don't need Amway salesmen right now. We we need people who can face the nitty gritty and help our people in moments of real financial crisis. And every church is going to be full of real people with real financial crisis. So it is time, if you've got financial expertise, it's time for you to step up and offer your services as part of the church leadership team. If there are going to be a whole lot of people who are going to be stuck, there are going to be people whose hot water systems break, whose roofs leak, whose dogs need to be walked. There's going to be a whole lot of really basic and practical needs. And if you are someone who understands how to fix stuff, if you're someone who doesn't mind walking a dog, we need you. We need you to be ready to step up and do the kind of practical service that helps people stay healthy. If someone ends up with a hole in their roof and water coming through the ceiling, many builders are just going to be too busy and not able to help. This is a time where the church family needs to be ready to help each other. And we also need, particularly for families who are struggling or who are going to need extra help, people are going to need food, basic food necessities. So, like never before, we at Citywide, we don't have a food bank, other churches do. We need people who are ready to offer, and in all this, we need to be ready to manage the cleanliness around it. And also, we're going to need to work out how do we give people food. This is not a time for people to be starving. Right now, all these things are probably okay. We've got about a week or two before it really starts to hit. But I suggest if you have time available, can you be ready to give some of that time? And if you have expertise, can I ask more of you? Can I ask you not just to think about giving your time, but now stepping up to leadership in your church in a particular way? Because all these things are part of care, but I think we also need to understand that all the people with expertise in this area, your task is not just to care for the church. As a church like never before, we need to be caring for our neighbours and for our city. And we need to be ready to provide this kind of care to our whole city. So please consider joining your church team in a new level. And for some of you, this means actually coming in and helping lead whole new ways of responding to need for your church. In the past, we have thought that it is the church that serves. I just want to erase that now. No, in the church, it's people who serve. You can't, in this moment, trust your established church structures to do all the work. We need you to step up now and not be thinking about yourself, not be becoming self-protective. We need our healthcare workers to be advising us. We need to be taking all the right precautions, but we need, in this particular moment, to be ready to step up and ready to care. And even there probably there may be a time where we can no longer actually leave our houses in a way. We're going to need to be ready to respond to that moment. Hopefully, that'll be only for a few weeks when we get to that point. But before then, we need to be doing all that we can to be preparing people. And we need to, if we get to that point, we need to be ready to be providing as much of this help online as we can. And we're going to need to work out in a lockdown situation, how do we make sure that people with crisis healthcare needs, with people running out of food, with if they get to a point where their plumbing's broken or whatever it is, we need not just to be hanging around waiting to call the professionals to come and do it. We need, as the church, to be ready to step up. In this moment, like never before, the church needs to be thinking about new ways of helping people in discipleship. We need people who, we will continue to provide teaching on a Sunday morning. We will. But we also need to be thinking about how do we get people resources in new ways and have lists of resources, lists of books that they can get easily, podcast, videos. And so we need to be, as a church, we need our teachers to step up. I can imagine every church has people who have expertise in different things. We have people, and we have a whole lot of people who have done Bible colleges and things. This would be a great time to start an online college using Zoom or other technology, and doing while people are stuck at home. There's a chance to be connecting, and just in passing, it doesn't have to just be about discipleship. It can also be, we could run craft groups online and a whole lot of other things. So we'd love, if you've got a teaching background, a Bible background, I'd love you to be thinking about and starting to think about how can I put courses together that people might want to engage with online. And we need mentors like never before. People are going to need to step up into new levels of responsibility. All of us are going to need friends along with us on the journey, and we need people who are willing to mentor people to learn new skills and do things differently. So we need to think in new ways about discipleship. And what do we mean by discipleship? We mean apprenticeship. We mean actually becoming more and more like Jesus. Your church can't do this for you. This is where we started. It's about you. You're going to have to take responsibility, but your church has a responsibility to have your back and to support you in this process. So please, can we encourage those of you who have been thinking for a while, gee, I could give a hand. It's now time to step up. And finally, what we have in the past meant by worship has been usually what happens on a Sunday morning where we come together and sing. There is something profound and important about singing. And we need to keep fighting to find ways to sing together. But worship is much more than singing. We do need to find ways to sing together. But in a particular way, I think God is going to encourage us to think in new ways about what a worship service looks like. Again, the last thing we need to be doing right now is to be watching church. Church is not something you watch. Church is something we are. So any corporate worship thing that we do through an online platform, we need help to think about how it can be interactive. And in a particular way, right now, we need our creative people to step up. We've had this fantastic suggestion come in for us here in Tassie. There's been a real sadness for many that the Dark Mofo festival has been closed. It's such a big tourist thing for us. It's always been a bit of a point of a contention for the church. But one of our creative people said, look, this could be a moment where we find a way to crowdsource and get people to do lighting installations in their front yards in that week where Dark Mofo normally happen. Let's encourage people to get some luminescent paint and do some creative stuff. That's the kind of thinking we need from our creative people. We need you to do creative stuff that helps us lift us from our head and helps us connect with our heart. We need you to think in new ways. We need you to engage with our church service in new ways and be thinking in new ways about what kind of church services will best serve people in this moment. This is not a time to replicate business as usual on a Sunday morning online. This is a time to be open to what the Spirit has and how do we genuinely worship together as a network of followers of Jesus right across this state. And it's interesting to see what's happening right across this world. We need to be learning to worship together. And finally, nothing matters if we're not praying. I'm really encouraged to see the calls to prayer that are going out. I would love to see, this is where I'd love some IT help eventually. We need to get a 24/7 prayer chain going. It'd be great. Wouldn't it be good if we get it going around the world? It would make it a lot easier. I think we need just this whole moment, our state to be, our country, our world to be bathed in prayer at the moment. And in prayer, we need to both be praying pastorally. There are going to be all kinds of very real needs, very real needs. We're going to have people who can keep confidence and pray for people who are struggling. We need to build our prayer team like now. If you're willing to be part of our prayer team, please let us know. And if you're from another church, let your pastor know. Say, I'm on the prayer team. Let me know what I can do, who I can be praying for. And like never before, we need our whole church to be listening to the voice of God. We are Jesus' church. We are Jesus' church. And he can have whatever he wants. In this moment, it is very clear he's inviting us to think in new ways. And we need to make sure it's not our egos, it's not our fears, it's not our identities, but it's Jesus leading the show. So I honestly, I am excited by what all this means. I think our first Sunday doing a micro church model is just a first sign of things to come. But if you're watching right now, can I ask you to pray right now and to think about what God is asking of you? Because it is time to step up. It is time, even if you are stuck at home, you can be part of our prayer team. You can be ringing people. You can be part of our pastoral team. But ask God what he's asking of you. I don't want you to do stuff because I ask you. I want you to do stuff because you know it's right. What I can tell you, what I can promise you, is you are not called in this moment to stay home and watch Netflix. You are called to love your neighbors, to trust Jesus, and to join the church as it finds its role in a moment of global crisis. We can do this. Please, I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to get your comments, and I'd love you to join the team. And so, if you're watching from another church, so would your pastor. He needs your help right now. She needs your help right now. We, as a church, need to be thinking in completely new ways. These are the questions, and you are the answer. So please join the team as we, the Christian church, respond to a moment unlike anything we've lived through before. Thank you.